Hello everybody, John here, and today on To The Garage we're doing part 3 of our USA versus UK words that are used in the context of garages, cars and our automotive hobbies. And as we said at the beginning of both of the previous two videos, if you're coming to this for a xenophobic program to fuel your fire, to do some American bashing or vice versa, go away. This is not what this is for. I like probably half of the American expressions more than I prefer the British ones. So this is genuinely a discussion about which words are interesting, which ones do we understand, both sides of the Atlantic, and where do they come from. It's just entertaining and interesting. Now, in part 2, we introduced a word that actually I thought had no American equivalent, and the commentary has proved that part to be true, and that was shooting brake. And shooting brake refers in the UK to an overtly sporting estate car, insert station wagon for America, but not just any example of an estate car that was fast would do the trick. There is something about a shooting brake that is very obviously a shooting brake if you're British. It's kind of a really compromised estate. The styling has been made more important than the load carrying capacity is. Or the fact that it is an estate seems pointless because the nature of the vehicle it's based on just doesn't lend itself to anything like that. It's very much a sporting vehicle with a nod to an estate car. And out of the commentary that we got after that was some really good stuff, some examples from all over the world of what shooting brakes were and weren't. But one of the phrases that jumped out as a really good descriptor is, if somebody says it's a shooting brake and it's got 4 doors, it's probably not legitimate. Now, I like that a lot, and I would definitely use that in my description going forward, in that the vast majority of estate cars and station wagons will be 4 doors. If it's a 2-door station wagon or estate car, that immediately says it's something a little different. So I'm going to definitely include that in my descriptor for a shooting brake. It must only have 2 doors. However, I'm not going to go as far as to say if it's only got 2 doors and it's a long roof, an estate car, it's a shooting brake, because that opens up the Austin Allegro as a shooting brake. Enough said. In this episode, I thought we'd concentrate a little bit more on tools. As with a lot of what's gone before, I don't think there's anything this side of the Atlantic or the American side of the Atlantic that's going to throw people so badly that they're going to go, I do not know what you're talking about, because American movies and film, etc., permeates the UK psyche. So we hear the expressions and we're very familiar with them. But it is interesting to explore the differences. Now, we can't talk about tools without starting off on the most fundamental of tools and the most obvious America versus USA descriptor. And that would be, there is only one thing I can call this. It is a spanner. I would never refer to this using the American term for it, which is a wrench. So, and they're almost universal. So if you're in the UK, you're going to call this a spanner. If you're in the US, you're going to call this a wrench. Both parties know what the other one's talking about, but it's quite interesting that it's such a distinct difference. Where does it come from? Does it matter? There's certainly not a which is right thing about this. So let's start off with the word spanner, which it just sounds slightly amusing, I guess, and therefore we like using it. British humour is almost unique. It's not, but it's almost unique. Our use of sarcasm and irony is pretty extreme in some cases. And if we abuse a friend verbally, it's usually a mark of affection. And one of the terms that we might use to describe somebody as a fool, let's say, is to call them a spanner. Oh, but you're such a spanner. And you can use that term without offending because it's so extreme that they know you don't mean it. Very odd. Yeah, so spanner is also a slightly abusive term in the UK, as is the word tool. And I think that crosses the Atlantic. So if you call a friend a tool, in the UK, you know, that's sarcastic, that's it's also ironic, because if you call somebody a tool, it probably means you're useless, whereas the very definition of a tool is to be useful. Odd, eh? Anyway, spanner. Why? What the hell? Spanner actually has very clear origins and makes absolute sense once you've heard it. And that is, this is a fixed tool. It is a 24mm open-ended spanner in this case. And once I use the expression, this has a fixed span of 24mm. This makes absolute sense. It is a gap between two surfaces is a span. A gap between two banks of a river is a span. That is why these are spanners. And this is an open-ended spanner. In the States, that would universally be called a wrench. But wrench has meaning as well. There is a reason where it's a wrench. And a wrench, the word wrench, means to pull, strain, or work hard. So, yeah, I mean, there's obvious reasons for it. Wrenching something is pulling it or twisting it. You can wrench your ankle. Oh, I've twisted my ankle. You've wrenched it. So wrench makes absolute sense too. But never the twain shall meet. Brits will always call this a spanner. And wrench is a word we don't use, with one or two very distinct exceptions. Goes to drawer 2. This is absolutely in the UK and America a torque wrench. Why is it a torque wrench in the UK? Well, it's not a spanner. On its own, it can't open anything. You've got to attach something to it in order to use it, whether that be a socket or some other attachment. So that is a wrench, and that makes absolute sense to the sort of British psyche of naming culture, in that, yeah, it's to twist, turn, strain, wrench it round. So torque wrench is our only noted example of that. Next one is just the opposite end of this. And that in the UK is absolutely, universally a ring spanner. But in the States, that same thing would be a box spanner. And again, I think most Brits would understand box spanner. I think all Americans would understand ring spanner. But there is a reason that we don't tend to call this a box spanner, even though it has some sort of logic. Boxes fully enclosed. And that is, originally, these would be called box spanners, because The same reason, it all the way encloses the fastener. And at a time when a lot of nuts were square, coach building days, then obviously square, this made a lot of sense as a box spanner, and it would typically have two different sizes either end. You put a little rod through it. It's a box spanner. It's not common to see these sorts of things these days anyway. They're not a common tool, but when they are in use, they're often called pipe spanners or flare tools or flare spanners, because it's kind of like a flare pipe, but not in common use. You occasionally see stuff of this design used in plumbing, and you sometimes see things of this design used for spark plug tools, but not common. There's a reason that I've kept out my torque wrench. This is a tool that in both America and the UK we would refer to as a crow's foot. So there is no confusion here. I'm only bringing it up because of the context of this. We talked about in the UK, we'd refer to this as a torque wrench because it's not actually able to do work on its own. It's a wrench, it's not a spanner. Here is an example of a spanner we can attach to our torque wrench. So just in case you haven't seen one of these before, it basically enables you to do open-ended work with a ratchet. You can't get onto the nut using a closed or boxed spanner, so you've got to use an open, but you need, for whatever reason, to use a square drive. Torque is the main reason for that. So you would attach a crow's foot adapter to your torque wrench. And just again, as a little note and aside that's of interest to me, if you're going to torque something up like that, then you will apply more torque than you think you're applying, because you've effectively increased the length of the beam and therefore the reading is a little bit out. You can minimize that by applying the torque with one of these at 90 degrees, because approximately the distance between here and where the device is measuring torque, which is in the handle, is very similar. Let's not go into an argument about planar differences, hypotenuses and all the rest. Turn it through 90 degrees and you'll get a more accurate reading. This is a crow's foot adapter and is specifically designed so that it gives a good torque reading, because it's in line with this shaft, and as long as you keep it upright you'll get a good torque reading. It's also used for loosening off the rocker bases on Ford Pinto engines to adjust. Our next one brings us right back to a comment we made in episode 1, in that in the UK we tend to name things for historical reasons. In the States you tend to name them for that's what it is, say what you see reasons. And this is a good example of that. That in the UK is a Stanley knife. That in the UK is a Stanley knife. In the States, both of these would be referred to as box cutters, occasionally utility knives. We recognise the term box cutter, but really wouldn't use it. We do use the name utility knife, but I would say that 90% of people, if you ask what that was, and it's made by Rolson, would say a Stanley knife, innit? Because Stanley is the original manufacturer and patent holder on a particular style of knife. And it's a style of knife that holds and allows you to cut with effectively tough razor blades. short replaceable blades. What are they used for? Probably more than anything else, cutting open boxes and cartons and drywall or plasterboard, as we say in the UK. So box cutter in the States, Stanley knife in the UK. And Stanley, company born in the States. So you've got 1857 Stanley Company, the Stanley Ruler and Measure Company, making tape measures and wooden rules and set squares and all that sort of stuff. Stanley bought Chapman Tools in the UK, which is a Sheffield manufacturer of woodwork and builders' tools mainly, but also made bayonets. And they bought that company, and it basically took over the manufacture of the Stanley knife and developed it to the classic design. And you know, this is a Stanley knife to us, slidable blade. You unscrew it and you can take the blade out. It's also irritatingly safe, springs back. This is a classic, genuine Stanley knife. You can slide it through this rifle lock. See the bayonet and gun connection. Dog leg, allowing you to put the blade out. It locks in position, or push it further forward still, exposing the blade entirely, and elegance of all elegance, held in by a magnet. And then once it's half in, it can't escape and you can cut with it. And the tail end of this one actually has a little compartment. You press the button, holding a wide selection of Stanley blades. Interesting point, and I know it's true some places in the States, but that is illegal to have on your person, whether it's concealed or not, in a public place in the UK, unless you have a very good reason for having it. And a very good reason is not to defend myself or in case I see something to whittle. You have to be working on a job that needs something like this, and if you're not, you will be towed away. If you had one of those in your pocket and for whatever reason it was taken from you by a police officer in a pub, you would be going off to the police station, no doubt whatsoever, and you would probably be charged with holding an offensive weapon. So in the UK, this is a Stilson. I'd just like to point out for UK viewers, it's a record. In the States, that would be a pipe wrench. Again, back to our old friend, history versus say what you see. This is most commonly used for tightening pipes. Why? Because if you have threaded round section tube, there is nothing to grip, there's no flats, so you want really sharp teeth, and what's more, the more pressure you apply, wouldn't it be nice if it got tighter and tighter and tighter? So that's how a pipe wrench works. The more pressure I apply to the lever, assuming I'm going the correct way, which is this way, then the tighter it will get. So it can grip round objects relatively well, and of course hugely adjustable. They come in a massive range of sizes. In the UK, this is a Stilson because Stilson is the first guy who basically patented the design, and we stick to that. So this is a pair of Stilsons. I don't know why we use the term pair of Stilsons. It's not a Stilson, it's a pair of Stilsons. Really not quite sure on that one. Just a oddity of British language. Like we say a pair of trousers. Well, that suggests that each leg's called a true, which it isn't. And I know in the States you'd be calling it pants, but that's a different video. So yeah, Stilson. named after the person who patented the design, and it really hasn't changed much over the years. Now, I did mention that occasionally people would say, oh, that's a monkey wrench, as an Americanism, and the use of the term monkey wrench is a little bit lost in time, but essentially used for an adjustable wrench that is used for a sort of Swiss Army knife style. You know, it'll fit anything. Obviously this will, but this is badly suited to hexagonal nuts because the jaws are not actually parallel. They're not a span like a spanner is. That might be called a monkey wrench. That might be called a monkey wrench. That might be called a monkey wrench. And we're really on the edges of what people really know here. I don't know this one. If you do know it, then let me know. Tends to be regarded as used by a monkey, i.e. somebody not overly skilled, which obviously is not the best naming convention because very, very skilled people might use these. But the sense is not ideal for the job. No adjustable wrench or spanner, as I would call that, is ideal for the job because the very nature of their movable jaw means there's play in there and it's going to allow more possibility for slippage or to round off a nut. There is actually one form of an adjustable wrench that I did own one of, and I've lost it temporarily, that is not subject to the same sort of flexibilities here. And it's a World War II German U-boat spanner, which uses a pivot pin down here and swing in slip gauges that fit between a fixed 20mm span. That is beautiful because it's a spanner still, yet it's adjustable 1mm at a time with no movement in the jaws. But I've mislaid it, so I can't show you. So there is a Stilson or a pipe wrench. In the UK, what we're looking at is always referred to as an Allen key, A-L-L-E-N, as is small ones, as are, this is a T-handled Allen key. And in the States, these would be called hex keys. And this is another one where I prefer the American expression because we have Allen keys. It results in oddities like, here I have some Allen bolts, which is not really true. You know, that's a countersunk headed hex drive bolt. That's actually a cheese headed hex drive bolt, but we would definitely refer to them as Allen bolts because that's an Allen key. And again, Allen is about patenter, designer, original, and William Allen came up with that in about 1910. And the last one I'm going to share quickly now is, here are a selection of what in the UK we would say are mole grips. All different styles, all different sizes, all different brands, I'll add. That one's unbranded. That one's ETC. That one's a Clark, and they're all mole grips. In the States, these would be called vice grips. And actually, they both come from brand names. Mole grips is quite interesting because in the early development of these, they were made in Wales, and there is a Welsh patent on them. And the factory that you go to see the mole grips being made, you would pass through a tunnel immediately before it with a picture of a mole on it because it was a sign for tunnelling in Wales, and people refer to it as the mole factory. And it's the mole grips, that's where it comes from, which is why I like it. Vice grip is a trade name in the States, equally quite an old design. I think both of them could vie for being the originals. The difference really is just in the design of the release mechanism between a true mole grip and a true vice grip, and they've all morphed over time into this collection of things we call vice grips, vice wrenches, or mole grips, or just moles in the UK. Okay guys, I'm going to leave that one there. There are several more videos to come in this USA versus UK series. We're going to deal with the oily parts, the bits of a car that you can buy from your motor factor. There's another expression in British English about the road systems in our various countries. And we've got a few suggestions coming in from our subscribers for sort of additional chapters in this series of videos. Glad you're enjoying them. Glad everybody's entering into the conversation in an appropriate and interesting way. Thanks for all the tips on entomology, sources of words, particularly stateside, because that one is a little trickier for me. We'll wrap it up now because I've got a little job to do on Purdy, and also this evening I've got a few people coming round to view the 62 magnificent photographs that are in our 2021 photo competition, every one containing an X100. We're going to try and whittle those down tonight to the top 20, just because it's completely unmanageable to have a voting polling system for you guys to vote on all of those. So just going to take it on trust that we're, in all honesty, just picking out the top 20. There will be no politics involved. Nobody will get to see who they're off, where they are in the world, all that sort of thing. And I won't have a vote except a casting vote in the event of a disaster. So very soon we'll be presenting you guys with the 20 best pictures of 2021 of X100s for you to vote on for our winner of the calendar competition that's going to end up on the front cover of a calendar for 2022, and the runners-up that will appear in it. Really looking forward to sharing those with you because they are brilliant, and it's going to be a long night trying to get it down to 20-ish. So wish us luck and see you soon. If you're enjoying our channel, then don't forget to subscribe and click the little bell icon so you get notifications of new videos. And please give us a thumbs up or thumbs down, and you can share the videos. And below the video is always the area where you can comment and get involved with the chat.